Welcome to DC2B Revolution, helping chiropractic students think big in order to live large. I'm Noah Voles, and today I'm here with Dr. Kevin Christie. He's the owner of Health Fit Chiropractic and Sports Medicine, and he's also the owner of Health Fit Corporate Wellness. He's doing a lot with chiropractic, spreading his wings. And so, Dr. Kevin Christie, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. It's been a pleasure to connect with you in Facebook groups and stuff, and I with these opportunities.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the show. You know, I've had over 50 different guests, and I'm starting to kind of move into new territory with people doing work that you're doing. So I wanted to kind of start by talking about what you're doing with your chiropractic sports medicine, and then also kind of phase into corporate wellness if we have enough time for that. I'm curious, what do you feel like chiropractic's role is in sports medicine, and how are the schools and the different trainings preparing chiropractors to work in sports medicine?
It's a good question. I graduated from Logan College of Chiropractic in 2005, and when I was there, for me to dive into it was two things. They prepared me well from the basics, but I think if I would have just followed the curriculum, I wouldn't be where I am today, to be completely honest with you. And I can probably say that about most schools. So extracurricular activities for me consisted of active release technique later on when I was a student, and then during most of my course of 4 years there, was Motion Palpation Institute. So I was really heavily involved in MPI, and that gave me a lot of good information on how to deal with sports injuries. I felt that was more applicable into the real world than just your textbook learning. And so I spent a lot of time with them, going to their seminars on adjusting, on functional movement assessments, on doing different gait analysis. And this was before the functional movement screen was really popular and had a lot of certifications. This was before Titleist Performance Institute, so there really wasn't a ton out there in the 2002 to 2005 range. And so I would say those two things really got me prepared for it. And then I was lucky enough when I got out to 2005, come to South Florida and started applying what I knew in kind of a clinical setting that was a lot of active lifestyle folks, but not a ton of professional athletes. And then just to give my story a little bit was, I worked as an associate for about 1.5 years at a really nice practice, learned a lot, had a good job, but then I was given an amazing opportunity in 2007, a chiropractor that was down in Miami. So if you don't know the geography of South Florida, he was in Miami, I was in Coral Springs, Florida, which is a different county above, probably a 50-minute drive, 50. And then he gave me an opportunity to go partner with him without having to dish out any money, luckily, to open up a chiropractic practice inside of a sports training facility that was in more of like Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So it was a little bit too far for him to do anything with. He had his full private practice. So I came on board, and the gym was called Perfect Competition at the time. And the guy who was running it, the trainer, was Pete Bomarito. And you can look his name up and you can see some of his accolades. And he subsequently has opened up Bomarito Performance Systems, and I spent 3 years being kind of his clinical director. And I mean, we're working with some of the top NFL players at the time. This was in 07 to 2010, and you name the running back, they're coming in. You name the linebackers. I mean, it was a ton of guys. I honestly probably worked on 300 NFL players in that 3-year period of time, because we also ran an NFL combine training program. So I was a clinical director of that. So we would have 30 guys come in through that I'd have to manage. And then probably 20 of them would get drafted into the NFL and become NFL players. And then we always had about, we had a lot of guys, like 60 to 70 guys come in during a year throughout different times. And I would treat most of them. So it was a phenomenal experience, kind of trial by fire. And I learned a lot. And then subsequently, he wanted to open up his own facility, which is Bomarito Performance Systems. He moved down further to Miami, and around the same time, I moved up to Boca Raton, Florida, which is another county up. So I'm kind of giving you the whole tri-county area. And there was a guy named Tony Villani that was moving down in 2010 from Atlanta, and Pete and Tony knew each other, and so he connected me with Pete. I just got really lucky, Tony was moving from Atlanta to Boca Raton, and I was moving from Fort Lauderdale to Boca Raton, and so we connected. And for the last 7 years, I've been Tony Milani's clinical director, and he runs XP Esports, and just been running clinic. I've done 10 combine programs where we go to Indianapolis each year. I work with his NFL guys, his major league guys, and we're actually in the process of opening up, kind of coming full circle, opening up a huge facility in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that will be training and sports medicine. So that's kind of how I got to where I am now in 11 years. A lot of hard work, but a lot of things falling in the right place for sure.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And thank you for that, talking about MPI. I actually just signed up for MPI course. It's my first one. I'm excited to check it out. It comes highly recommended. You mentioned it as well. So excited about that. And then also, luck, right? You said you got really lucky. You had all these great connections. But in my mind, luck is a combination of skill and opportunity. So obviously you had the skill set that was needed in that environment to really excel, to have those opportunities and to take advantage of that luck. Was that skill set primarily the MPI that you mentioned? Or was there another skill set that you developed, in those years, right, coming out of school, that really helped you leverage those opportunities?
So I would say MPI was like the baseline, gave me, the workings of having the ability to do it. I wouldn't say it's what got me to where I was, and because the reality of it is, I would say the two things that got me the opportunity with Pete Bomarito, and that chiropractor that actually I business partnered with was Matt Cooper, and you can look him up as well. But the two things that got Matt Cooper's attention, what he's told me was, one was I was out in the community a lot. And so I can't stress that enough. I wasn't at that point, my first year and a half, working with the high level athletes, but I was working with a lot of runners and triathletes and gym members. And this was before CrossFit. So there wasn't like all these CrossFit boxes that were producing all these injuries. You had to go to regular gyms. I was holding workshops on functional assessments at facility I was at. I was just doing a lot of things. And so I would run into Matt at golf tournaments. I'd be working at golf tournaments. Like I was just doing a lot of stuff. But then I would say what gave me the real opportunity to actually work with the athletes, the high level athletes, and be Pete's clinical director was the fact that I was full body active release technique certified at the time. And especially then, still to this day, the ART definitely has some pros and cons to as far as the expense of it and things like that. And there's a lot of other good techniques. So I'm not saying that you have to be ART certified, but for me at the time, especially in 2005, 2006, 2007, it was getting super popular. A lot of the athletes were asking about it. It was just the thing that they were asking about. And so since I had the full body ART, that was almost the entry level I needed to work with those high level athletes. I'm not saying it is anymore. It still is in a lot of circles. Most NFL teams have ART providers on site, so it's got a lot of good qualifications still with it. But back then, especially, that was what got the door open for me. And then from there, I was prepared. I knew my stuff. I wasn't an expert. I don't think anybody is a couple years out of school, but I knew enough and communicated well enough to where I built the trust with them. And I knew when to refer out. And then from there, I just kept on learning and learning and learning at the highest level. And then I was able to apply that to my private practice.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for kind of breaking that down and talking about the importance of ART. Really any myofascial soft tissue seems like such an important part of a sports medicine practice. And also, kind of going through being out there in your community. Recently I've been asked to hang out with some athletes from different colleges in the area, the water polo team, the swimmers team, the volleyball team, that sort of thing. And I don't really have kind of the functional movement skill set that you have. What would you recommend for somebody like me with these opportunities to do kind of functional movement analysis or functional rehab for athletes? What steps would you do if you were in my shoes?
Yeah, you could always self-teach, which is fine. But I like learning from the best a lot of times. And to kind of go back again during my learning process, I wasn't only doing ART. I was doing some of Greg Rose's golf stuff before their TPI. I think it was Advantage Golf, and he was in Maryland. And so I was doing a lot with golf. And then once TPI started, I went to the first summit. I was the first certified group. I was really at the beginning of that. And at the time, and I don't know if it's like that anymore, but I went down the medical track for Titleist Performance Institute. And Medical 2 was Gray Cook teaching us the SFMA and the functional movement screen. And then level 3 was Gray Cook teaching us the correctives. So I had like the guy teaching that. So I never actually went and got SFMA or FMS certified. I'm kind of I am de facto because I'm TPI certified still. And so that counts, which is nice. And I learned a ton. It was very in depth. And I've utilized that ever since. I don't use the functional movement screen as much anymore. I rely on some of the trainers that I work with that do that, and I do the SFMA, which, if you're hearing this for the first time, I'll give you a little distinction between the two things. The functional movement screen is a set of 7 tests that you're going to do on healthy people to look for physical, dysfunctions and imbalances, whereas the SFMA you're going to do on people that come to you clinically with pain, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to work around that pain from a corrective standpoint and see some of the movement pattern issues. And they usually reserve that selective functional movement assessment for clinicians. And so that's the big distinction between the two. So that was helpful. But again, before I even started doing the TPI stuff, I understood functional movement stuff and tests from MPI. Like I took a lot of their things. Brett Winchester is one of the instructors now. I went to school with him. And so I was lucky enough early on. He's maybe a full year ahead of us, but early on in MPI, he was teaching us. He was a student teaching us, and now he's obviously become one of their top instructors. And so I would say that MPI is a really good start for your functional assessments and movements. So.
Perfect. That's super helpful, I think, with the MPI. And I know there's a lot of SFMA on campus, and I can talk to people who are teaching and offering that. I wanted to kind of transition a little bit and make sure that we have a little time at least to talk about what you're doing with Health Fit Corporate Wellness.
Okay.
And I guess the initial question I have is, in terms of the transition from, sports medicine into corporate wellness, it's all performance, right? Whether it's sport performance or human performance, there's so many parallels between the two. How did you make the transition, or where were the parallels that you saw between those kind of two seemingly separate things?
Yeah, and there are different niches. I talk a lot about, I have a whole marketing thing I do, and I have a Facebook group and a podcast called the Modern Marketing Chiropractic show or group, and people can look more into that if they want to reach out to it. But I talk a lot about marketing and try to help out people with that because it's a big problem. We graduate from chiropractic school and we know how to be a chiropractor, kind of, but we don't know how to run a business. We don't know how to do marketing. And so I've done a lot of that, obviously. And one of the things I talk a lot about is niching down until it hurts, and really niching and finding that niche. And I was able to do that, obviously, with sports chiropractic. And really, I spent my first 6 years niching as the guy to go to for sports injuries. If you have a sports injury, you want to go see Kevin, even more than some of the orthos and things like that. So that was my focus. I hyper-focused on that. But I was always intrigued by the corporate stuff. Again, to bring it back, I am Active Release Technique certified, and they do have something called ART Corporate Solutions. That was, to be honest, the first time I heard about it. I never had any accounts with them at the time. But then, honestly, again, I got really lucky. When I moved my practice up to Boca Raton, not only did I get lucky with getting connected with Tony Villani in there, but I got this. Again, it's all about networking and meeting as many people as you can. I did a running talk, and one of the runners became a patient of mine. And she happened to be, this is the whole 6 degrees of separation thing. She happened to be a paralegal for an attorney group. So she set me up with a meeting with the attorney, because in Florida, auto accidents are pretty lucrative. I don't do a lot of it. It's probably about 10% of my business, but it does pay well. Most of mine now are just referrals from my patient base or patients getting an accident. But at the time I met with him and we had a good meeting. And so 2 weeks later, he sent me an auto accident case, and the patient comes in, really nice girl. And she comes in like on her third visit. She realized like, oh, you have all half days, because when I had transitioned out of my Plantation Fort Lauderdale office to Boca, I still had, like, I sold out of that partnership. So I still had to do like 6 months of time at the other office to transition a new owner. And so I was going back and forth. And so when I opened my practice, it was nice because I had a lump sum of money that I could do to utilize it, but I couldn't open up full hours. So she thought I just was like at the beach all the time, like half days at the beach. And she didn't realize I was going back and forth and working nonstop. She comes in, she's like, "Oh, you have all half days. Like, would you?" She had these set of floor plans, and she's like, "Would you want to have a chiropractic office in our new building we're doing?" I'm like, and I look at it, I was like, "Yeah, what's the catch?" Because I knew this. Give you kind of the picture of it. It was Tyco ADT Security at the time, and they opened up this huge facility with 800 employees. They have a main street in there, so you walk in, it's all cobblestones and essentially lined by stores. Everything from a fitness center to a company store to a Starbucks to a doctor's office to a massage therapist to a salon. You can get your hair and nails done to a chiropractic office. And she's like, "Oh, we'd love to have you in there." And I was like, "Yeah, what's the catch?" And there was no catch, like no rent, nothing. So I opened up a satellite office inside there to where we only can treat the employees, but I didn't have any overhead. And it allowed me to start that, and then subsequently, right out of the gates, probably like 8 months in the business, hire an associate. And then that associate was working that location and my office, and it kind of paid for that. And so from there, I was like, if I can do it in one place, I'm sure I can do it in others. And that was in 2011. And then now 2017, we're in about 7 locations. Plus we're doing other digital-based ergonomics things for companies. So.
Perfect. Yeah, I was wondering about that. Great opportunity. What like you said, once again, opportunity plus skill. You got lucky having this great patient who kind of gave you this opportunity, and then we're initially started with chiropractic, but now you're doing some more digitally based ergonomic stuff and doing some providing some other opportunities for these employees to really optimize their health. How do you feel like, from the chiropractic lens in terms of ergonomics, how do you feel like the program that you're offering is different than, what an occupational therapist or somebody else who works with ergonomics might be offering?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And so, and just to touch base, I kind of didn't close the loop on the niching. And so at that point, I decided to add a second niche. I think if you really dominate one niche, you can then add a second one and it won't convolute the first one. And so I've spent a lot of time with the corporate setting now. And, we have the podcast called The Modern Desk Jockey, where it's a weekly episode for health and wellness for the desk worker. And that ties into what our office ergonomics initiative is. It's not so ergonomics, from what you typically learn about, is very cumbersome and very expensive. It includes going to the work environment, doing a full assessment, a lot of times ordering a bunch of equipment for the thing, or recommending a bunch of equipment. It gets very expensive, and it gets very, very, very just cumbersome, very hard to actually scale. So we had a company called World Fuel Services come to us about a year and a half ago, and they said, "Look, we have 6,000 employees all over the world, as their name implies, World Fuel Services. How do we implement some kind of ergonomics program that can scale to all of them?" And I gave them my idea. They actually paid me up front. I took all that money and plus more and developed this platform. And because I own the rights to it, and then we can subsequently renew every year, and then obviously sell to other companies as well. And what this is it's a bunch of things, the Office Ergonomics Initiative, but a key component of it is a learning center for the desk worker, right? So it's everything from videos to presentation to webinars to articles and downloads and all kinds of things that are just educating the desk worker on how to utilize their current setup and utilize it correctly and stay healthy. And so other parts of the Office Ergonomics Initiative total is webinars. We have an ebook, like an 85-page ebook written for the desk worker. Obviously, we have the podcast. We do all kinds of different digital-based ergonomics assessments where they can do a 20-point questionnaire and it generates reports for them. And so from there, now we can scale that across many locations and many employees, and that's kind of the angle we're looking on that. I'll still do some. I was in Kansas City in February doing a fuel truck drive along to really implement ergonomics there. So I'll still do some of that, but mostly we're doing it digitally now.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I think this is so cool, the kind of mapping out your, quote unquote, your origin story or everything, just kind of seeing how you continually upgrade. You started with this strong foundation, you made some good connections, you got bigger, you dominated a niche, then you went into another niche. Now you're starting to expand in that niche. I mean, I feel like your kind of trajectory is what most chiropractic students want to do. They want to figure out, like, how do I dominate in this niche, get into another niche, keep expanding, keep growing, open more clinics, serve more people. So it's so great to talk to somebody who's done that and who has a roadmap and who's willing to share. How can students get in touch with you? How can they find out more about what you're doing? And learn from you how to accelerate their progress so that they can do this, hopefully in half the time that it took you to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I'll touch on, I did an episode on my podcast, the one that's called the Modern Chiropractic Marketing Show, and we interview a lot of different people. Like I just interviewed yesterday, Bobby Mabey of the Forward Thinking Chiropractic Alliance, and I've interviewed like a world-class public speaker. It's all about just growing your practice and business, because I've done a lot of it. But I had one episode where I laid it out on the table, and it was how the title of it is My Devastating 2015 and How I Had a Counterpunch. And I mean, in 2015, so to kind of answer your question, it's like, it's not this huge trajectory up all the time. Sometimes it's more like the stock market, where as long as it's up, but there's going to be some downs, and it's how you get through those downs that really is going to kind of let you get to where you need to. And my 2015 was horrendous. I got divorced personally. One of our corporate locations that was responsible for $8,000 a month in revenue just pulled the plug because they had changed CEOs, and that was huge. Blue Cross Blue Shield in the state of Florida cut our reimbursement by 40% right on April 1st of that year. And then I had to unfortunately terminate a chiropractor that had done something he shouldn't have. And that was a revenue center as well. So, I mean, it was 4 substantial things that we had to survive. And I'm just actually glad that we did. We were doing very well, and then we were not, but we were surviving. And then now, we've sustained that body blow, and we've delivered the counterpunch. And so, as you start your path upwards in this profession, realize there's going to be some times where it's, whether one day you're slow with patients, don't beat yourself up. Whether it's a week you're slow, don't beat yourself up. If it's a month, or if it's a bad year, just realize that there's always a response to that, and you'll grow from it. So I wanted to throw that in there so you can listen to that episode. So you can reach me on the podcast. I do have a Facebook group with the same name, Modern Chiropractic Marketing Group. It's a closed Facebook group, but you can request access to that. Or you can just email me, kevin@moderndeskjockey.com, and I'll answer any questions you may have regarding that. And then lastly, if you want to see my private practice and what we've got going on, it's healthfitchiro.com. And we've got a pretty well-developed website. And what we did from a marketing standpoint is we turned into a content platform. So that way we can generate a lot of good content marketing. So that's how they can reach me. A lot of different avenues, but I'm sure they can find me.
Yeah, brilliant. And thank you for talking about that trajectory. I think as we come out of school, we think it's going to be, easygoing, and we're just going to kind of go up, 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 and up. And it's so important to have the big picture in mind and recognize the 5, 10, 15-year goals and the long-term goals, and just make sure that you're staying on track for those big goals, even if the day-to-day, year-to-year goals don't seem to be going as well as you would like them to go. So yeah, thanks for keeping us on track.
Yeah, quick story. I was interviewing Bobby Mabey yesterday, like I was mentioning, and we talked about that. And I think one of the things that the young DC needs to understand is that you don't have a residency. Most doctors go to medical school. They don't make a lot of money out of school. They spend 3 years plus at a residency. My ex-wife was a foot and ankle surgeon. I spent the first 3 years of our relationship while she was in residency working like 70 hours a week, making $37,000 a year. So I tell that story because you have to understand early on out of school, like it's a learning process. You have to look at it as residency. Don't get too frustrated. Just keep on growing and learning. And usually in your 30s is when things start to happen for you. that's how it was for me. I graduated, I was just turned 26, and I didn't open my own practice until I was 30. And those first 4 years were just pure building my reputation, my expertise, my know-how. And then my 30s have been a lot better. And I'm 37 now. And so hopefully the 40s are even better. So just take it, one day at a time and learn or understand that it's not going to be riches right out of school. It's a learning process. And then you will do very well.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you for ending with that. So this has been a production of DC2B Revolution, helping chiropractic students think big in order to live large. I'm Noah Voles. Please let us know if you like this video by subscribing to the YouTube channel, leaving some comments below for Dr. Kevin Christie that he can answer. And yeah, thanks once again, Doc, for being here and offering some great information. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was great. Thank you.